To make a story truly memorable, it needs to leave an impact, something that lingers in the minds of the audience long after it ends. In shonen anime, one of the most effective ways to achieve this is through a character's death. But it's not just about killing off someone. It's about crafting a loss that carries meaning and emotion. A well-executed death creates ripple effects, driving the plot forward, sparking character growth, and deeply resonating with the reader or viewer. In this video, I'm going to explore what makes a well-written death and what doesn't. This doesn't need to be said, but for the people who haven't gotten the point of this video yet, there's gonna be some obvious spoilers. So if you don't want to get spoiled on who dies, then just watch these anime before clicking this video. But to the rest of you who've already seen these anime or just don't care, please be sure to like and subscribe. It motivates me to create more stuff for you guys. So with that out of the way, let's get started.
Each of us lives dependent and bound by our individual knowledge and our awareness. All that is what we call reality. However, both knowledge and awareness are equivocal. One's reality might be another's illusion. We all live inside our own fantasy. Don't you think that's true?
Itachi was a righteous man raised in a righteous community. The Uchiha were a deeply connected and prideful clan, so prideful in fact that it turned to arrogance. This arrogance would have led into Itachi's village into civil war, which would result in thousands of casualties. Itachi was the only few shinobi out there who believed in peace. He loved his family and truly respected his clan, but knowing the route they were heading, and including the threats of Danzo and Obito in this context, Itachi wasn't given any choice. He'd either stand aside and witness the destruction of his village, or he'd have to take action by killing his entire clan for the sake of the shinobi world, and Itachi's belief made him choose the latter. He put his clan to rest and saved countless lives for it. But in return, it resulted in the death of his family and the deeply rooted hatred from his brother. Sasuke was the last person Itachi wanted involved in any of this, so of course Itachi wouldn't tell him anything. So in Sasuke's eyes, he saw the person he looked up to as a monster. Even though he prevented a war and practically saved the entire world, he was the culprit for Sasuke's despair. Despite his selfless actions, it costed the happiness of the person he loved most. And of course Itachi had to live with that, until his final fight with Sasuke. His death not only brought closure to their long-standing conflict, but also revealed the truth behind his actions, forever changing Sasuke's perception of his brother. Itachi didn't fight to win, he fought to free Sasuke from the burden of his hatred. His death wasn't just some dramatic sequence, but a silent and bittersweet ending to not only Itachi himself, but the relationship between him and Sasuke. Itachi silently conveyed his affection and forgiveness. His story was the culmination of a life lived in sacrifice and secrecy. He's the best fictional example of an unsung hero, taking the best choice he had possible for his belief in true peace and the livelihood of his younger brother. Of course he wasn't perfect, he still made mistakes, but in the end, he made up for those mistakes as best as he can, and still showed affection to Sasuke until the very end. His sacrifice became a testament to the cost of peace and the complexities of love, leaving a permanent mark on Sasuke and the entire shinobi world. One of the biggest complaints I see about Ace is that he lacked any sort of character development before his death. While I find it is understandable, I believe what makes his death so impactful isn't just the closure it brings to his character, but the profound effect it had on Luffy and the overall narrative to the story. Ace didn't necessarily need the personal growth leading up to his death because his journey was always about finding meaning in his life. Born as the son of the world's most infamous criminal, Ace lived under the shadow of Roger's legacy, carrying the burden of the chaos Roger's name brought to his life. These circumstances made him constantly question his own worth, whether he deserved to be loved, or if his fate was predetermined by his lineage. Ace's capture served as a turning point, allowing him to realize his value to others. Seeing the crew he grew up with and his younger brother risk everything to stand against the overwhelming military might of the entire world, solely because they cared about him. It answered the question that haunted him for so long. Ace never believed anyone would go this far for him, but witnessing the sacrifices made for his freedom finally gave him clarity and closure. His personal arc was completed at that moment, as he understood his worth through the love and dedication of those around him. However, the impact of Ace's death extends far beyond his own perspective. It is through Luffy's eyes that this moment becomes even more significant. Up until this point in the story, Luffy had always found a way to achieve his goals, no matter how ridiculous they seemed. He repeatedly pushed himself and his crew to their limits, risking everything to succeed. And for a time that worked, but as the story progressed, reality began to sink in. During this war, Luffy fought harder than ever, going up against the strongest forces in the world, and even sacrificing chunks of his own lifespan, twice, to keep fighting. Yet, despite his efforts, he couldn't save Ace. This marked the first time Luffy failed at a goal he set out to accomplish, and it brought him to his lowest point in his life. This moment completely destroyed him. However, this failure became a turning point for Luffy's character. It forced him to mature and realize the weight of his ambitions. He knew he couldn't let something like this happen again. So Ace's death not only drove Luffy to grow stronger, but it also pushed him to develop a deeper sense of responsibility and understanding. This moment left a permanent mark on Luffy's character, and the overall trajectory of this story. This death also had a profound effect on the fans of One Piece as well. One of the longest running jokes in this anime will be how nobody dies in the story, which to an extent they're right. One Piece does have a lot of these Mickey Mouse ass pull moments, but Ace completely changed my view on that in my opinion. Not only did a character die, but it was also the main character's brother, with the most tragic context. This just shows that Oda isn't afraid of killing off characters if necessary. The lack of deaths in this anime still kinda drags it down, but Ace and Whitebeard's conclusions always make up for that in my opinion. And even as the story continues, his death will remain as one of the most climactic and unforgettable moments in this story.
Your heart, you say? You humans always toss around that word so casually, as if it's something you can hold in the palm of your hand. Tell me, what is heart?
This one to me is probably the only death I rarely see people discuss on, which is kind of a shame since this is genuinely one of my favorite characters, and a big reason for that is because of his death, which was kind of the motivation to making this video. This death is the encapsulation of who Ulquiorra is, and the message Kubo intended to set across, that being nothingness. If you were to take one quick look at this character, he is pretty much nihilism personified. The concept of emotion or belief is something he views as meaningless or unnecessary, an illusion that people use to make irrational and unwise decisions. This to him is what he considers a heart. In Japanese, the term Ulki uses is kokoro, which has other meanings like emotion and spirit. In the context of his character, anything and everything he views as tangible has no meaning, and anything that does have meaning is intangible, and does not exist in Ulquiorra's eyes. And this mindset is something he constantly pushes onto others around him, Ichigo and Orihime explicitly. He constantly kept demonstrating to them that these intangible concepts, such as the cringy, gushy feelings that humans feel, mean nothing in the face of absolute facts and logic. But throughout this arc, Ichigo and Orihime do somewhat humanize Ulquiorra in a way, where he does begin to unfold his inner self more and more. When Ichigo claps back at him, he does get more riled up, and up until that point of his death, he begins to feel empathy, but unfortunately, it's too late. And this moment here is what made him my favorite character in Bleach. All of this subtle growth he was getting, all the emotion he was setting out for, it felt like he was going to the right direction. But in the end, he falls back into nothingness. At first it genuinely shocked me as I thought he would be part of Ichigo's crew in the future. But the sudden conclusion is such a perfect way to create an impact. Sure, it didn't have much of an impact in the overall story, but it did have an impact on me. Knowing in the end, he finally found his answer. The heart he was searching for was in the palm of his hand this entire time. Now this death isn't part of the thumbnail, just mainly because this death I feel is way too important to just show publicly. The entire plot of this story is from this person's death, and it pretty much culminates one of the best endings in a shonen anime I've ever seen. And most people agree with this take as well. So please, if you haven't watched Code Geass, go watch the first 2 seasons. I don't care how old it is, this death is too good to just talk about lightly. But if you've watched it already, then feel free to listen. Lelouch and the anime itself already introduce a fresh perspective for a viewer, where it intensely focuses on the perspective of the main character. Of course it does show its side characters, but the author of this anime basically just made it the Lelouch show, and mainly just shows Lelouch alone, and how he takes on the world around him. Lelouch can be best described as a person of pure passion and ambition, fully hard-coded by his beliefs, and willing to do anything to get what he wants, and I truly do mean anything. Throughout his journey as a leader of a revolutionary army, he does grow and adapt to the world around him, as his original goal was committing evil deeds to bring down a greater evil, that being the royal system. But as he's lost more and more people and caused more bloodshed on both sides, he changed his solution. Instead of annihilating a greater evil head on, he instead becomes that greater evil, bearing all of the burden and hatred this world has, the hate that Lelouch had. In order to change the world, he must sacrifice himself. He assigns Suzaku to hold the mantle of Zero, the leader of the revolution. so that he could kill off the king, the main placeholder of everyone's grudge. It is a very ingenious and in-character way to go out for Lelouch. Like I said earlier, he's willing to go the extra mile to get what he wants. Even as a leader of a massive army, he still makes the first moves and decides the biggest decisions. That's how passionate he is. He believes if the king doesn't lead the charge, then how will the rest follow? And in an ironic and poetic sense, he removes the king. This death and this ending all folds everything together so well in many different ways. More ways than I've seen any shonen anime done before. And Code Geass is only 24 episodes. Most if not every anime and manga I've seen, they've all struggled with a satisfying ending. Most of the time they either feel rushed, lazy, or just outright mid. But this ending was a great refresher. It's rare enough to see an author kill off the main character, and it's even more rare to see it pulled off well, which elevates the specialty of this death even more. This is textbook definition of how to write a character death. It's tragic, emotional, conclusive, and satisfying all at the same time. It isn't shock value just for shock value. It is foreshadowed but is not directly telling you in your face. And it ends how the story implied it wanted to end. It is, in my opinion, the best written death I've seen so far. This is also another motivator for making this video, because I don't see this character be talked about enough. But that pretty much concludes my video. If you want more videos like these, let me know what type of analysis you guys want me to cover next. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe, of course, to help me put out more content more often. And with that being said, thank you for watching.